Um, all right, welcome everyone to our live stream. The session is being recorded and will be posted on professional social media platforms such as YouTube and LinkedIn. Anyone not consenting to being recorded has been asked to drop from the session. Anyone staying in this call is considering to have given consent to being recorded and the recording to be posted on social media. Um, some quick house rules before we get started. Please mute your microphone during the interview. Be respectful throughout the interview. Please don't share any inappropriate stuff in like the chat. Um, there'll be a Q&A session at the end where you can ask questions by raising your hands. And yeah, okay. So let's get started. All right,
You
I'm
want to
so
record the
glad
video?
you guys. Huh?
Do
What
you
happened?
start? Did you start recording the video?
Yeah,
Did you start recording?
yeah,
Yeah, it's recording. I can
yeah.
see
It's
it.
recorded. Yeah.
Super.
Okay. Um. So I'm so glad you guys could join us today. We'll be talking about a very important topic today, which is the impact of light pollution on amateur astronomy, and we'll also be talking about strategies to reduce it. So before we dive in, I want to give a quick overview of today's agenda. Um, you can go to the next.
Mhm.
All right, and then you'll see the schedule up on the slide right now. Um, as you can see, it's going to go from welcome, defining the problem, meeting our guest, questions, audience questions, and then the conclusion. All right, I want to take a moment to thank the Night Sky Restoration Project team members, or NSRP. We are a nonprofit that is created for spreading awareness on the impact of light pollution on various communities. Thank you to Alvin, Rudy, and Carlo for helping out with the questions, social media posts, creating the registration form, and as well as brainstorming. I also want to thank my parents who were very supportive of this initiative and have provided me guidance throughout the journey. Okay, so before we start, I want to take a minute to explain what exactly light pollution is and what inspired me and my team to focus on this topic. So, light pollution is the excessive or misdirected artificial light produced by streetlights, buildings, and other sources, which brightens our night skies and makes it difficult to see stars and other celestial objects. Culturally, we lose something beautiful and irreplaceable when skies are no longer dark. The sight of the Milky Way and constellations has inspired stories, traditions, and scientific discoveries for thousands of years. Losing our view of the stars means losing a connection to our history and to the wonders of science and exploration. Light pollution is making it difficult for amateur astronomers and budding space researchers since they don't have sophisticated instruments to observe the night sky under light pollution. Therefore, it hinders their ability to pursue their passion of celestial observation as well as their ability to contribute to space research. Now I'll be introducing our guest. To help learn more about the impact of light pollution on amateur astronomy and space research, I'm honored to introduce our astronomer guest today, Mr. Trung. He's an amateur astronomer and astrophotographer based in Cerritos, California. Mr. Chung's journey in astronomy began at the age of 10 with the beginner's telescope, and when the pandemic hit, he took his passion even further and shifted from visual astronomy to astrophotography. Despite the challenges of raising very young children and working from a light polluted city, he's continued to capture stunning images of the night sky from his own backyard. Mr. Chung holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Cal Poly Pomona. Alongside his professional background, he's been involved in several community projects, including Science Night at Cerritos Elementary School, Astronomy Night and Art Exhibition at Cerritos Library, and collaborations with the Columbia Space Museum in Downey. Currently, his research focus is on searching for new asteroids and supernova, and his greatest passion is capturing and sharing the beauty of the cosmos with others. Mr. Chung also brings a unique perspective on the issue of light pollution. Wally describes his connection to light pollution advocacy as one of strong awareness rather than activism, mainly because parenthood takes up much of his time. He's very familiar with the challenges urban astronomers face and is passionate about sharing that with our audience today. So, welcome, Mr. Chung, and thank you for joining us on a weekend and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Um, I mean, you're never mind. Here's
Oh
the
yeah, and a
yeah.
bit of correction. So I don't do astrophotography in the backyard. I
Mm.
do it in the front yard.
Oh,
It's well, a couple of reasons. One is I have too many trees in the backyard that just obstructs the view, and number two, I just want to put it out at the front so people could see what I'm doing. So if they have questions, they could walk up, and it's something that I like to, share my passion with. But anyway, go ahead.
all right, all right. Um, okay. So next slide is the interview structure. So first we'll be asking questions related to the problem, then we'll be asking questions about current solutions, and lastly we'll be asking questions about future solutions relating to technology and policy.
Sounds good.
All right. Uh, all right. Now let's jump straight into the interview. Um, so Mr. Chung, let me start with asking about your interest in astronomy and astrophotography. How exactly
Sure.
did you get interested in both of these fields?
Um, so kind of cliche to say, but it started when I was young, when I was little. Um, I I would always look up, gaze at the moon, look at the bright stars, and there's not that many stars. Just only the brightest ones is what you could see in the city, right? Because all the other stars are obviously lost in light pollution, and also later it turns out that most of these bright stars that I thought were stars turn out to be planets. But anyway, um, just all of that just got me curious and wondering what they were, right? I was very young, like maybe age 7, 8 or something like that. And then I think my dad had taken notice that I would keep looking at books, would keep looking at the like space pictures, in the school books and science books. And so for my 10th birthday, my dad got me a toy telescope, a beginner's telescope. And I got really excited because, with the telescope, I now have something tangible to get involved with astronomy. So I was able to see the craters on the moon, the mountain ranges on the moon as well, and then Jupiter with their four moons, the Galilean moons, right? Io, Callisto, Ganymede, and Europa. And then Saturn, I could see the rings of Saturn, and it's just crazy because it's a toy telescope that actually was good enough to resolve those images. And I thought it was the coolest thing, and I got hooked on it ever since. And then years had passed. I would continue reading books, astronomy books, looking at pictures, interesting pictures in the books, that were to me inspiring, and I was captivated by their beauty. And then the pandemic hit, 2020 with COVID. People stayed at home and turned to hobbies. For me, that's when I decided to shift from visual astronomy to astrophotography, as a kind of as a way to elevate my journey into astronomy. And, and speaking of tangibility, I felt by doing that it was even more tangible in that I'm capturing photons emitted by galaxies millions of light years away, and these photons are collected onto the image sensor of my camera, right? So there's a feeling that it's real, it's in my possession, and I can show to people what I've collected, the photographs that I've taken with my own camera, my own equipment. So it's one feeling to look at some pictures of the cosmos, but then it's a totally different experience, a satisfying and rewarding experience when you look at a photo that you've taken, So that's how I feel, and I just keep going because the cosmos just seems endless. Space. It's a dynamic space. Things keep happening. New supernova explosions, new comet discoveries. And space is exciting, and that's what drives my passion.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's pretty cool how you connected like um personally with the universe and stuff.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story. I came to know about your astrophotography project through one of your exhibitions at the Cerritos Library. Could you please explain to the audience about what you do to fulfill your passion in astronomy?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for visiting the exhibition at the Sears Library. That I think every patron that walks in and admire my work, I feel humbled by that. So a couple things to fulfill my passion. You know, Hobbies exist for a reason. People tend to do something because it's a challenge, right? It's always about learning new things. Uh, Astrophotography isn't easy, right? It requires different kinds of skills. You have to understand the concept of operations, putting together the right equipment, and then using the equipment effectively to capture the data in the highest quality possible. And then not only that, you also have to process the data. I mean, there's so many moving pieces, and everything has a learning curve. And that journey in itself is fun for me, at least. So one thing I do is I look for good resources that I can learn from, books, joining local astronomy clubs, even looking at YouTube, YouTube University. You could learn a lot on YouTube if you pick the right videos. Another thing to fulfill my passion is public outreach programs. You mentioned the Cereals Library. I had an art exhibition there that lasted for 2 months uh, early last year. Um, Also, my involvement with the Columbia Memorial Space center it's a museum in Downey. That's where I would share my passion, teach kids how to use telescopes, have people line up and look through the telescope. Um, I actually did that last night. The museum had a astronomy night event last night, so I was there with my 12-inch Dobsonian telescope and had people look at Orion Nebula from there, which is visible in city light pollution if the telescope is big enough. So it's a 140-pound telescope. I had people help me move it around, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. Um, Also, so I mentioned the Sewell's Library, the Columbia Museum, also the school. So like I would volunteer for science night at Cerritos Elementary School. Um, been doing that for a couple of years now. And then another way is I also have a YouTube channel that mainly covers the topic of astronomical data image processing that I share publicly. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. That's really inspiring how like you use your technical skills for outreach and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, could you describe any memorable experiences that you had while you were trying to evade excessive light pollution during your work?
Uh, Memorable. I would say more like scary than memorable. I went to Amboy Crater uh, in that's like in Death Valley. Uh, I'm a grown man, but like that place, that area is so dark. I've never experienced such darkness in my life until I went there. But it blew my mind at how vivid the night sky was with such little light pollution. And I got a little emotional just lying on my back and just enjoying the night sky, looking up to the Milky Way, which is very clearly defined. And I set up my camera, my telescope, my equipment, and I captured some images that were so easy to capture. It was again, it just blew my mind at like how vastly different it is being in that dark site versus being in the city.
All right,
Did that
thank
answer the
you.
question? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Um, is there any place on Earth that has like zero light pollution at all? And could you also explain like the concept or the Bortle zones?
Yeah. So we'll start with the Bortle zone. So like it's it's a 9 level rating system, um, from 1 to 9. So 1 would be like the darkest place on Earth. Absolutely no light pollution at all. The only light is the stars themselves. That's how dark Bortle 1 is. I've never experienced Bortle 1, but I imagine, if you held out your hand at arm's length, you could probably barely see your hand, and it's only lit up by the stars only, on a moonless night. So that's Bortle 1. Bortle 9 is the absolute worst end of the scale, and that's where like the big urban cities are, like Los Angeles, New York, London, Tokyo. Even here in Cerritos, even though we're what, 7 or so, 10 miles from downtown LA, it's still Bortle 9 here in Cerritos. It's the lower end of 9, but it's still 9. And then once you cross over towards like more of like East Orange County side, like La Palma, Buena Park, and further that way, it drops to an 8, like a high 8. It's still pretty bad. Um, uh, and then if you're wondering what Bortle will you be able to see the Milky Way, I would say like Bortle 6 is where you kind of start to make out the Milky Way, and then Bortle 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it gets clearer and clearer. So that's the Bortle scale. Um, I'm sorry, what was the other question? Oh, you were
Yeah,
asking like the darkest places on Earth.
yeah.
Uh, you know, for that, basically just follow where all the professional observatories are located. Like the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, that that was under construction for a while. For the last few years, it was expensive. It was maybe a $2 billion project, and it was constructed over the Atacama Desert in Chile, in South America. And I think it's a Bortle 1. So that's one of the darkest places, and that's an ideal place too because of the elevation, because the Atacama Desert is quite high in elevation, and when you're higher up in elevation, the humidity is less, so that's even better for astronomical observations as well. So let's not forget, it's not just light pollution. There's also humidity, so the water vapor could also have an impact. So it's super super dry over there, so that's perfect. And then another, there's a third element to it, which is uh, the the seeing conditions. So like the atmosphere is very very stable high up in altitude. So there's hardly any wind, there's hardly any turbulence, there's hardly any jet stream, because those could ruin the seeing conditions. So like when you look at stars and they twinkle, they're twinkling because a star is like a tiny pinpoint of light, but as it cuts through the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is like turbulent, right, and wavy and all that, it starts to to go a little bit to the left, right. So it's not going straight to down to earth into your eyes when you look at it. It's kind of doing this because of the turbulent air that's always flowing and moving, and it's being unstable. And so that's the result of like twinkling stars. The more they twinkle, the worse are the seeing conditions, and that makes the image blurry. So up in the Atacama Desert, there's hardly any of that. So that's like the absolute best place, I would think. If someone, if a government or entity spends $2 billion on an observatory, it's going to be over there, you know, because it's a lot of money, right? So that's the best place for that. I probably overspoke, but was there a
No, no,
third
no.
question in there? Okay.
No, no, no.
Sorry.
Um, okay, yeah. Thank you for giving an overview on light pollution. So, now we should get into like the various solutions that we can actually do to solve this problem. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the technology solutions currently available to mitigate light pollution in amateur astronomy and space research?
Uh, we could start with simple ones. So like light fixtures, you know, put shielding on the light fixtures to cut off the light from going up. You know, cut it off, have it redirect or reflect the light down, you know, aim it back down to the area that matters the most, right? And then there's smart technology, you know, that could be used to automate the lights. Uh, Another technology is optical filters that's used by amateurs and observatories. I use them. You know, the picture that you've seen that I've taken, it's by the use of optical filters. They're not. It's not a perfect technology, but it's effective to a certain degree. So those are the main ones.
All right, thank you. Um, could you elaborate some of the sorry, for those of us new to astronomy, can you please explain some of the currently available technologies and techniques that you use, such as like the computerized telescope and adaptive optics to overcome light pollution?
Yeah. So in astronomy, particularly astrophotography, uh, the I use all sorts of optical filters. There's two main types of optical filters. There's narrowband and there's broadband filters. The narrowband is basically a tiny window, like a tiny narrow slice of opening that allows a very specific wavelength of light to pass through while blocking most of all the other ones. You know, the rest of the light spectrum is blocked. So that's a way of fighting light pollution. And that tiny opening would be exactly at the uh, basically the wavelength that is associated with nebulas and stuff like that. So like, for example, most of the nebulas are emitting light at the hydrogen alpha transmission line. That's like 656 nanometer. That's towards the red. Um, so you basically have a filter that has an opening right at that uh, part of the spectrum at 656 nanometers. So have an opening right there. It's like a tiny slit, and then uh, that data would then flow through or pass through the filter and into your camera sensor. So that's narrowband. Broadband is it's a bit of a wider opening, so it's allowing the pass through of most of the visible light spectrum and just blocking narrow passages that's associated with light pollution. Those are good for things like galaxies and comets. So that's those are the available technologies. And as far as technique, it would be very difficult technique. It's many hours of exposure time of using a camera. So you know, like those of you that are familiar with using a camera, you could do like long exposure, like a 10-second exposure for like a dark setting. But then if you're taking a picture of someone in a 10-second exposure, they can't move, they have to hold still, right? So, but I'm doing hours of exposure time, um, and that's how I could do it in the city. And that requires a motorized mount. You mentioned motorized telescope. And the reason why it requires that is because in these long exposure, the Earth is rotating, right? Every 24 hours, right? So like that means the sky is moving. So you need the telescope that's sitting on a motorized mount in order to move the telescope to track the movement of the sky. Uh, so that's kind of a necessity to overcome light pollution. Thank you for
Thank
that
you for
question.
that. Um, that shows like so astrophotography is like requires a lot of precision and patience then, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's painful. It's rewarding. It's but you got to start from somewhere,
Yeah.
and it's totally doable.
Mm.
Yeah, if you
Um,
put your back into it.
yeah. My next question is, how effective are full cutoff light structures or light fixtures and shields in reducing sky glow?
I think they're very, very effective based on current practices. So like I think Flagstaff, Arizona, they they're dedicated as a dark sky city, right? Where they've adopted cutoff light fixtures. And I think there was a study that was done that indicated there was a 40% reduction of light pollution sky glow, you know, because they have almost nearly 0% light going up. So, most of it, almost all of it goes down. Uh, Although, there's a bit of reflection problem where it's bouncing off the tops of buildings and streets and concrete sidewalks, but it's still better than nothing. It's quite very effective.
Thank you for that. Um, so you mentioned like that observatories and space research get affected by light pollution. Um, what steps are they taking to overcome like the light pollution challenge?
Uh, so to overcome it, that's a good question. So I guess one way is to give up, give up on trying to gather data, scientific data, astronomical data, in the same spectrum as light pollution. And yeah, so give up on that and start doing something else. Start gathering data in a different data outside of the light pollution spectrum. You know, I think one prime example would be the Mount Wilson Observatory. Uh, they've lost their ability to gather scientific data in the broad visible spectrum. So, and the reason for that is because that observatory was built over 100 years ago when Los Angeles didn't have that big of a population. So it was good back then, right? But over time, the population grew to what, 20 million people, and new homes were built. The suburbs grew, and then so you have like street lights, residential lights, industrial lights, and a lack of planning on how to control these lights. So it's kind of sad that they could no longer view faint objects, but they adapted by installing, I think, 6 or 7 new telescopes that work in a different way. They work together as an array. It's called a Chara array, and that's where they capture data in the near infrared. That's like 1,000 to 2,500 nanometers, and that's totally outside of the light pollution spectrum. Um, uh, so they're still in operation, but just doing something new. And by capturing data in that part of the window, um, it's a different kind of astronomical data, but it's still valid data. So that's uh, that's how they're overcoming the challenge. There's no way to beat it, so just do something else, essentially. Only other way is move somewhere else. So that's why a lot of telescope is going to that place that I mentioned earlier, which is the Atacama Desert in Chile.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Um, so now let's talk about like some policies.
Sure.
What are some current policies that communities have implemented to mitigate or control light pollution?
That's a good question. So I mentioned Flagstaff earlier, right? So Flagstaff in Arizona, they they have a policy. Their policy has this really strict outdoor lighting codes, I think since the 1950s. And the reason why they have it is to protect the Lowell Observatory that's nearby. And they're doing cutoff fixtures, so it's quite easy to do. They're also limiting the brightness per property, you know. And then they're using low pressure sodium street lights. That technology of street lighting emits light at very narrow wavelength at like 589 nanometers or something like that. So that makes it very easy to filter out. And as a result, that area is a Bortle 4, which is quite good. Um, there's another one, Tucson, Arizona. Uh, there's a what's the observatory there? I think it's Kip Peak National Observatory. So that's near Tucson, Arizona. So Tucson, they have ordinances that restrict bluish LED lights, and they're capping the total lumen output, the total brightness output per property, in order to protect that observatory. And they're doing a really good job. So it's currently a Bortle 2 there. Maybe I'll throw one more. So Hawaii, in the Big Island, the Mauna Kea Observatory, they have similar protections, similar policies as Tucson, they're also a Bortle 2.
Thank you for providing us with more insights on these policies and solutions
For
to
sure.
like solve light pollution. So now let's get into the various future solutions to this problem that are evolving. So what technological advancements do you foresee having the biggest impact on reducing light pollution in the next 10 to 20 years?
Wow, 10 to 20 years. It's like almost a crystal ball that I need here. Um, well, it seems like AI is getting bigger, right? For better or worse. So maybe utilize AI, utilize it to control lighting, turn on the light only when necessary. If detect if there's people or cars that are present, based on trend or things like that. Another one would be redesigning the LED lighting technology to emit only in very specific wavelengths. Similar to where like sodium vapor lamps is emitting only at 589 nanometer, uh, but better, because like sodium vapor lamps are very energy intensive. It consumes a lot of power. It's inefficient, whereas LED lights are efficient. So I think it makes sense to use efficient LEDs, but don't emit blue at all. So that makes it easier to filter out. Uh, Another thing that I foresee in the future is uh, we might we might see the use of space satellites to monitor light pollution from space. to determine the effectiveness of the different methods taken to reduce light pollution. Different policies, different standards, different technologies. So yeah, those are like the things I could think of that uh, you know looking ahead 10 to 20 years.
Mhm. Um, Thank you. So, with respect to future policy, what new policy approaches or regulations do you think are necessary to address the growing issue of light pollution?
Uh, what new policies? So maybe a few main things I would say, like cutoff shields, as we mentioned, brightness limitation to prevent overlighting, that Tucson and Flagstaff are doing. Uh, Color temperature limitations, right? Which includes narrowband emissions, like using only amber colored wavelengths, like sodium vapor lamps that we talked about. AI that I mentioned, smart technology for light controls. Maybe I'll throw in there tax credits or rebates for installing dark sky friendly lighting. Maybe impose curfews for billboards, like after midnight, for example. You know, uh, um, so approach regulations. Maybe come up with just one set of standard, one elegant set of standard that could be adopted internationally, that would be hard to disprove, and it's good not only for astronomy, but also it's also good for protecting wildlife, right? Um, Reducing health risks, improving health, reducing energy consumption and waste, all that while keeping the community safe and functional with just the right amount of light.
Thank you. Those are some pretty thoughtful ideas. Um,
Mm.
so do you think what economic impacts will light pollution have on communities, um, and in like and government? Sorry, let me restart. What economic impacts will light pollution have on communities and government in the future if essential steps are not taken to preserve the night sky?
Oh, it would be bad economic impact, I would think. You know, um, Energy costs will continue to rise if lighting isn't well controlled. Um, Probably in the billions of dollars annually. I don't exactly know the exact figure, but it would be a lot if it's on the global scale. Uh, Also, public healthcare costs will continue to rise as people suffer from chronic sleep disorders, um, uh, depression, obesity, cardiovascular disease, even cancer. And I imagine that's also probably in the billions of dollars annually as well. So it could be major economic impact.
Oh, thank you for that. As a student, what do you think that we could do in our own communities to help advocate for change? And how can we raise awareness and encourage people to adopt better lighting practices?
As a student, well, it sounds like you're already starting to do this actually, right? By having this interview. uh, by having this group and the Night Sky Restoration Project, you're going to be leading this starting in the schools, and then work your way up to like in the city of Cerritos and eventually other regions. Uh, as for me, I'll continue to raise awareness and public outreach programs. So, basically lead by example, right? Um, you could do it in your school's science projects where you could show how cutoff shields work and how it could save on energy costs. Show how easy it is that it could be done, right? So, just little baby steps, all the way to the hardest thing, which is, in my opinion, which is petitioning for local government changes. And then from there, uh, the government changes would be for like city planning and city zoning to have updated standards or codes for installing dark sky approved lighting, based on local or state government mandate, maybe even federal eventually. So, you know, basically start with public awareness and lots of it. And that may one day enable schools or education to teach students about it, start citizen petitions. You know, I, people people will need to grow an industry that will produce dark sky friendly lighting, and light control systems. Um, and people could work with groups like the International Dark Sky Association, or IDA, to enable and foster a persuasion to set lighting standards for urban planning.
Thank you. That was our last question. So,
Oh, okay.
thank you for your valuable time and for sharing your experience about how light pollution impacts people and
Yeah, my
impacts your
pleasure.
passion. Yeah, and impacts your passion in astrophotography and astronomy. Um, so, Mr. Chung, would you like to make any future announcements about like upcoming events or activities?
Um, the Cerritos Library, they're gonna host astronomy night. I'm going to be there. I don't know exactly which day it is. I don't know if it's publicly announced yet, but be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be sometime March or end of March. Um, Columbia Memorial Space Museum, they have monthly astronomy nights. It's every second Friday of each month. I'm usually there with my telescope or telescopes. So hope to see you guys in the next one. Um, I think that's it for now. I can't think of anything else.
Thank you for sharing those updates. We'll definitely keep an eye out for those events. Um,
Yeah,
Thank you again for joining us and sharing your insights. So now we're going to be jumping to the audience Q&A. I will now open the session for questions. Um, Once again, I'm just going to re-say the rules. Please use the raise hand button to ask questions. My team members will call out your name so you can ask the questions, or alternatively, you can just type the questions in the chat. Um, my team members will ask the question on your behalf. So, yeah.
sounds good. Oh, so these are the questions. Are you going
Oh
to
yeah,
be reading? Okay.
these are the ones that were shared in the registration link. So yeah, my team,
Okay.
my yeah,
Are you going to be reading the
yeah.
questions?
If there's
Okay.
no questions, then yeah, okay. So I'll just be reading these then. So can you provide for the first question? Um, can you provide guidance on how to start with amateur astronomy? Telescope types, DIY telescope cost, maintenance cost.
Uh, yeah. So I think the biggest hurdle would be budget, right? No one wants to spend a lot of money, so you could do this on a budget. And as far as equipment for uh, astrophotography, right? Well, if it's just visual astronomy, then you don't have to worry about like cameras or things like that. You just get a telescope. Um, I would highly recommend a 6-inch Dobsonian telescope. A Dobsonian, it's a type of mount where, like, it's a simple like swiveling, like it could swivel like a swivel chair, like this office chair that I'm sitting on. And then you have altitude adjustment, which is basically up down. So it's up down and then swivel left right. So that's the movement of the Dobsonian telescopes. Those are easy to use. They're about maybe $300, and a six. Did I say six? Eight. I think eight would be the better choice for value for the money, because you could see a lot with a 8-inch. So that's probably more like $400. Um, and that's enough to see like the clouds of Jupiter. That's enough to see Titan and Tethys. Those are like the moons of Saturn. They're hard to see on a smaller telescope, but 8 inch is like the probably the ideal size for the money. If we're talking about astrophotography, now that's a different camp. Um, for that, you could do what I do, like buy a really old DSLR camera off eBay. I spent $70 on mine. Um, and you could take pictures of interstellar objects with that, and a used telescope for like maybe $80, and then the telescope has to sit on a mount. That mount could be another 80. So you could imagine you could probably do astrophotography with just $200. Um, and uh, so that's what I would recommend. If you have access to a dark sky, then you don't even need a telescope. You could just use a camera with a detachable lens on a tripod and take pictures of the night sky just like that, so without telescope. So that's also doable. I do have examples of that on my website, if you could share it on here. And yeah, as far as maintenance costs, there's not much maintenance other than just cleaning the lens with a blower. um DIY telescope, there's you could make your own telescope, but it's not easy. I recommend just buying it. The cost has gone down considerably, so it's easily attainable. So that's a good question.
Thank you for that advice. Also, I just realized I accidentally, like, before the switch for letting people send messages was off, I just turned it on. So if you guys want, you can just send it like while we're doing these. All right. The next question is, what is your biggest accomplishment as an astronomer?
uh that's a good question. I I would say the art exhibition at the Sears Library. There was a lot of moving pieces, and it was a massive undertaking, because it it required me to do everything really, really well, right? You're like I needed to gather the data. The data acquisition has to be like at the highest quality that I could do, and then processing the data, I had to do it in the highest quality. um, so that was not easy. So to me, that's a big accomplishment. And then it's not just that side of things, but it's also the response, from the audience. So I felt like there was a lot of impact when the patrons first walk into the library, the Sears Library. It's kind of like almost the first thing they see besides that 15,000-gallon fish tank. And it was a good response. A lot of the people, the patrons that walked in there, they were engaged by it, and they asked lots of questions. So to me, that makes me happy, that people are taking notice. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you for that. All right, the next question is, how can we help limit light pollution in our homes and communities?
So we could follow like the policies that we mentioned earlier. So use cutoff shields, turn on lights only as needed. You could do like motion detection for that. Switch the lights to amber color lights if possible. And don't make the lights too bright. So those are like the simple steps that shouldn't cost too much money.
Um, how does light pollution work and what does it mean? In what way is our night sky damaged?
Um, oh, I see. And then how does light pollution affect wildlife?
Yeah.
Me. Uh, yeah. So in a nutshell, the way light pollution works is it's basically light scattering from the air molecules and the water vapor. There's a lot of water vapor in the atmosphere. Um, and it's coming from excessive lighting, mostly man-made, I shouldn't use that word, artificial lighting. And it's in areas where human habitat is mostly active, the cities, people where, residential areas where people live, and it's where people work in the industrial areas. Uh, and and these lights, there's so many lights, residential, as I mentioned, there's stadium lighting, park lighting, office building lightings, and most of it comes from bigger cities, and it would eliminate the the night sky and kind of like a dome shape. So imagine this dome of a diffused light that blankets over the city. So the city could be like this big, but the dome is like much bigger than the footprint of the city, like 30, 40 miles to the edge of the city. And uh, and that's what light pollution is. And so the other question, in what way is our night sky damaged? So because of that light pollution, we've lost the ability to see the fainter stuff of celestial objects. Um, and I mean, there are ways around it that I mentioned earlier, like optical filters and things like that, but they don't work perfectly, so it's kind of a compromised. And then the other question, how does light pollution affect wildlife and me? Um, Kind of a zoologist or nocturnal biologist question, or even physiologist question. Uh, but if I may try to answer it, I think uh, there would be some disruption to nocturnal wildlife to a degree. Um, I could see that artificial light and the glow of light pollution can cause confusion where they rely on darkness for, like, I don't know, like for hunting or for mating maybe. And confusion can cause stress. So I think there's some species of birds that rely on stars and the moons for migration. Uh, and as far as impacting you, as far as human health, certain light colors like blue can disrupt sleep, which in turn causes insomnia, you know, and feeling tired during the day. So we have this circadian rhythm, right? This internal clock that our body, our health rely on for sleep schedule. Uh, so and it's not just sleep schedule, it's hormonal balance, it's for metabolism, things like that. And all of that gets thrown off when sleep is disrupted. So that could take an emotional toll with depression and mood issues. In fact, I think the World Health Organization had identified nighttime exposure as a carcinogen for night shift workers because melatonin is decreased, and that changes the hormonal balance, which might have a link with certain cancers. Sorry, I might have overspoke on that question,
No,
but
no, it's all
yeah,
good.
continue.
Thank you. Yeah, that
Mhm.
that shows how like light pollution affects not only humans but like also nature and stuff. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like this question right here. If we were to reduce light pollution, how long would it take to like actually start to see stars again?
Uh, that's a that's a tough one. I mean,
Yeah.
it. it is totally dependent on it relies on how quickly government adapts to new policies, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, it it government moves very slowly, so I think it's gonna be a slow process uh, until we start seeing a lot of stars again. So I think that's probably the sad and unfortunate truth,
Mm.
um, which is kind of working against us, right? If you want to make change, it just means we have to work harder. It's like pushing water uphill, you know. But it must be done.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Um, this one's been answered. Astronomy as a hobby, right? Not actual, like, as a job or
Oh
anything.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
This one's been answered. How can I reduce or help reduce light? Oh, we got a question in the chat. I was just wondering what you majored in college.
so it's computer engineering and electrical engineering. And um, I almost finished my minor and being a mathematician, but I was so busy with engineering I didn't finish my minor. So just the engineering side. Thank you for that. And that was at Cal Poly University.
Have you used any of your engineering in your astronomy endeavors?
Um, to an extent, but not too much, because a lot of the equipment that I use are off-the-shelf consumer equipment that anyone could buy, and it's just readily available. Um, so there's not much. It's not only for engineers. It's for everybody. For what I do, with what I do. So if if anyone wants to dive into it, it's don't feel intimidated. It's anyone could do it. It might take a little bit of practice and training and getting help from people like me. But that's the point of me doing public outreaches, because people always have questions, and I'm there to answer it. So that's something to think about, is if you go into astronomy, whether it's visual astronomy or astrophotography, don't feel like you're doing this alone. There's always going to be support, um, from a lot of people.
All right, thank you for that. Uh,
Hmm.
the next question is, why should we actually care about the night sky?
Oh, that's a good question. It's like, who cares, right?
Yeah.
uh, there's my Alexa's talking. Alexa, stop. Let me. I'm sorry. Let me close my door. My Alexa's talking to me. Sorry about that. Well, it's it could impact us. So, like, do you guys know about the Chelyabinsk disaster? It was a 2013 disaster that occurred over Russia. Um, it was a meteor. I think it was an asteroid the size of a school bus, I think, that no one knew was coming. I mean, NASA had an idea, but they were actually looking for a different asteroid. They were tracking a totally different asteroid, and at a very different part of the sky. And while they're doing it, right behind our backs, figuratively speaking, this this rogue asteroid hit Chelyabinsk. 1,000 people, roughly 1,000 people, were injured. Luckily, no fatalities, but some of the injuries were serious. Um, and most of it was caused by the shock wave that blasted out all the windows of, at the schools, offices, businesses, and at homes. People walked up to the windows to see, like, what was that? Like, it was something bright that just flashed, brighter than the sun. And people got curious, so they walked up to the window, and then moments later, the shock wave got to the windows and blew it out, and onto people's faces and eyes. It was quite sad. When the Vera C. Rubin Observatory first turned on back in August in the Atacama Desert, the first 7 days of operation, it detected more than 2,000 new asteroids, right? I mean, that's astounding. Before it turned on, it would take years to discover 2,000 new comets. But this observatory did it in just 7 days, you know. And I think hopefully that's a one example to explain why the night sky matters. Why pouring money into resources like that matter. It's a $2 billion observatory, I think. Um, if we knew about it, we would have an early warning system, telling people publicly, public announcement, like, it's an asteroid is coming. Just like the earthquakes in Japan, Japan has a good early detection, early warning system, and that would save people from getting injured or even getting killed by it. And by the way, this is an asteroid the size of a school bus. If it was the size of, let's say, three times, like 3 school buses, that's kind of like on a logarithmic scale. Like, now it's exponential, right? Now that's powerful enough to, like, wipe out a small village. That's that that's dangerous. So that's why we care. You know, it brings technology to us. So most of us use navigation, right? Whether it's in the car or your smartphone, that relies on GPS, right? And GPS exists because of the understanding of orbital mechanics, right? For this global network of GPS satellites. So I'm pretty sure we came to that point based on understanding of space, of science, of technology. And so, it's all part of, like, knowing about the night sky. It starts from knowing about the night sky. For me, I care deeply about the night sky because it's my way of it's I mean it's a hobby, but it's more than just a hobby. I'm doing public outreaches because I'm trying to get kids to look up to the night sky rather than down on their smartphone and look at, TikTok challenges or whatever. So there's more than just that, right? So yeah, I could go on and on, but I think those are, like, the main ones to touch on, or examples of why we should care.
Thank you. I really like that example because so like observing the sky is not only useful for science but for safety as well. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we have two last questions in the chat. One is, what is the best way to take pictures in a light polluted area if you live in a big city with not much access to remote areas?
Um, the best way is how I've been doing it, and if it's, again, like a budget issue, I think a $200 budget for a simple telescope on a tripod, uh, and a really old DSLR camera that I mentioned that I bought for $70. That's enough to take pictures in the city, especially here in Cerritos. Uh, and as far as technique, so you could just do, like, 1 second exposure, but you do a bunch of it and you stack them together using a stacking program. Um, and they're free. So the stacking program that I recommend, you could Google it. It's called Deep Sky Stacker, or DSS. What that does is it'll it'll stack a bunch of images together to form one final beautiful image. And for those of you that don't know what stacking is, so imagine taking one picture, okay, of something like, let's say, a nebula. So you got the nebula right in the middle of the picture. Everything else is black space, right? Um, if you've taken pictures like in low light situation, like let's say the lights are off, maybe it's a birthday party, and then on the birthday cake you got a couple of candles that are lit, very low light environment. When you take a picture in a low light environment, it's kind of noisy, right? Because you have like random image sensor noise and thermal noise and things like that. So uh, you're gonna get some noise in your picture when you take a picture of a nebula. The good thing about noise, though, it's random. So when you take a picture of a nebula and the black part is all noisy, or the whole thing is noisy, then you take a picture of the same thing again, the noise would move, right? So now when you upload these two pictures into Deep Sky Stacker, it's gonna look at the two, and it's going to see what moved and what didn't move, what's static and what's dynamic, right? Anything that's dynamically moving is going to be noise. Anything that's static, like it's always there, it's going to be the desired uh, data, the nebula that you want to take a picture of. So it does a comparison between the two, and it knows what noise is, and it starts to average out the noise. So when you stack two together, it becomes a cleaner picture. And then just keep stacking. Stack three pictures, four. You stack like 1,000 pictures, you're gonna have like a really clean, beautiful image, like the image that I shared before we started the meeting. So um, so that's how you're gonna have to do it. Um, if you're in a dark sky, you probably don't have to stack, but stacking still helps. But you definitely need to stack if you're taking pictures from the city.
That's amazing. So the more images you stack, the clearer it gets, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. And then we have one last question. Do you plan to use your electrical engineering degree in relation to your astronomical endeavors in the future? Also, do you plan to tie in all of your interests together in the future, astronomy, astrophotography, and electrical engineering for work projects, etc.?
Um, well, so for work, I'm currently employed. I do science and engineering consulting. It's a private company, uh, but nothing to do with astronomy, though. So there's a separation there. My journey into astronomy, visual astronomy, that later evolved to astrophotography, is all of that has been just a hobby, but then that eventually evolved into public outreaches. As far as tying that to my engineering background, it does help that, you know, as an engineer, I have like, a really good understanding of how a lot of things work. So that made it very, very easy for me to kind of pick out the right equipment and putting it together. But it's not a requirement, obviously. You don't need to be an engineer. You could just ask questions in astronomy clubs from people that's already doing it, and then they'll make suggestions. So there's that piece right there. So it's kind of optional. I could tie engineering with astronomy if I wanted to, uh, but I'm currently not tying too much of it, other than just having a very good understanding of how each of these components work.
Thank you for that. Um, I think it's really important that we cover the types of light pollution. I think I might have skipped past that, but like sky glow and stuff. Do you think you could cover that really quickly?
Yeah. So there's a few types of light pollution. So the major one is sky glow. That's the most common type of light pollution. So that's like that the diffuse scattering that I mentioned. So it's scattering of light from the city that I mentioned. I used that dome um, example, right? So it's picture as this dome of a glow that covers over the city, like a blanket that I mentioned. So that's the sky glow, the most common type, and that washes out faint galaxies and faint nebula. You just can't see it, the faint stuff, but you could only see the brighter part of those objects. Another type of light pollution is stray light that directly trespasses over to the telescope lens. So an example of that would be like my next door neighbor's porch light. Her porch is super bright, unnecessarily bright, and that actually impacted the results of my astro images. Uh, so in response to that, I'm using this shield. It's like it's called a dew shield. It's designed to reduce dew, like water vapor buildup on the telescope lens. So I'm using that as a shield to block the stray light from hitting the telescope lens. So um, there's a third type of light pollution, kind of similar to stray light, and that's glare. That's like an example of that would be like a car passing by with really bright headlights. So that's where like the bright lights hit your eyes and ruins dark adaptation. But that only impacts if you're doing visual astronomy rather than astrophotography.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was actually all of our questions, I think. Does anyone have more? Okay, I don't think. Okay. All right, then let's wrap this up. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Trung, my teammates, and the audience for attending this meeting, and making the conversation engaging. I just wanted to make an announcement. Please follow us on our various social media channels, listed on the slide below. Is that a slide? Okay. We will make announcements on future topics, so please stay connected. We will also send a feedback survey to help us improve our efforts. Please respond. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Alrighty.
Bye. Thank
All
you.
right. Yep. Bye,
Thank you so
guys. Thank you.
much.
Thank you all. Have a good day. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.